Alan Miller has joined us. I think I've hit the record button, so I'm going to go ahead and pretend that I've actually gotten this meeting started like I want. So, hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Fisher, and it is February 18th, 2026, and welcome to the Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive Cascade Rail Foundation bi-weekly Zoom program for this particular date. Um, we've got a great calendar coming up this spring, and I would like my esteemed co-host George Foster to tell us about what is on tap for our next program on March 4th. George.
Well, let's see. Last week I talked with Rick Panisi and you, Jonathan, and we had a really lively discussion. And then Jonathan had to step out for a while. And when he returned, the lively discussion was still continuing. And so he and I had a lot of what we call in the railroad industry old heading and talking about old times on the railroad, and especially his years as a Federal Railroad Administration employee. And he actually did come to the territory. I worked in the Blue Mountains, so we had a lot of things to talk about, and at Hinkle Yard and over at LeGrand. So, yeah, really a great guest.
Yeah, what's this program going to be about?
It's the Delaware and Hudson, and we previewed a lot of things on there, and wonderful color and black and white shots, and we were able to identify a lot of the territory. And Rick started as a train order operator for the Erie Lackawanna when he was 17. So he was a young buck when he got going. And it was a really interesting time to talk to him. He worked for several other railroads, including UP and Santa Fe.
Santa Fe and
So
the Power
really a
Pool office.
well-rounded
He's got
guy.
a great picture of all the magnets up on the board of these locomotives all
Yeah,
moving.
it was great. It was
So
really good. So
I'm going to talk about our guest coming up in 4 weeks, and hopefully everybody can see my screen. Coming up in 4 weeks, we're going to have Tim Rep as our guest, and Tim wrote a book, Main Streets of the Northwest, Volume 1. I want to say it was late 1980s, and Volume 2 is going to be in print this spring. It's just a masterful book. He's a great photographer, and he'll be our guest talking about this new book that he's been working on feverishly. So it's a very exciting time. So that is good. And let me see if I can. I'm going to remove my pin. And George, I want you to introduce our special guest today.
okay, our special guest today is Mike Bergman, um, with Streetcars of British Columbia. So that we had a chance to preview that, and it's a very interesting, great bunch of pictures from the 40s and 50s, and we had a lot of discussion about locations and about the construction of the cars themselves. So we really like that. Anyway, so the basically the program is going to be an overview of the British Columbia Electric Railway operations during the 40s and 50s. BC Electric operated a large streetcar and interurban system in Vancouver and the nearby suburbs of Burnaby, New Westminster, and North Vancouver. Freight service was provided on the interurban lines with electric locomotives, and it continues today with diesel operation as the Southern Railway of British Columbia, and that's reporting marks are SRY for all you rolling stock junkies out there. Um, Going to have maps of his collection and photos in the Ainsworth Collection at the Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive. Mike Bergman was born and raised in Seattle and graduated from the University of Washington. His entire professional career was in public transit planning, operations, and project management. Between 1975 and 1980, he worked as a consultant for British Columbia Transit in Vancouver, followed by planning and management positions at King County Metro and Sound Transit. Mike retired in 2016, but still follows transit development and in the Seattle area and around the US and Canada. In 2021, he authored a history of Seattle's street railway system, Seattle's Streetcar Era, published by Washington State University Press. Since retirement, Mike has organized and cataloged PNRA's large collection of streetcar and interurban photos.
All
Take it
right. Well,
away.
there's a good introduction. So let me do this. Okay, and let me.
Fortunately, I wasn't a monotone today.
No, no, you were fine. And here's our
It
special
was
guest,
good.
Mike Bergman.
Yep.
And now your host and moderator, if I can get this right, I think I've shared our PowerPoint. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Hopefully, Mike, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Well, Mike, I'm going to turn my sound off and turn off my video. I guess I should say before I turn my video, mute my audio, I should say, Mike Bergman, take it away.
Okay. Well, thanks for letting me give this presentation. I've always been kind of excited about the history of interurbans and streetcars in Vancouver, and it's really great to kind of share this with other people. First of all, I wanted to show this page from the February 1943 issue of Mass Transportation magazine, which was a trade journal for the transit industry that covered both the US and Canada. And it kind of gives you a little picture of what the operations of the BC Electric were like in the Vancouver area in the calendar year 1942, during World War II. And you can see there that they have ridership numbers, they have passenger revenue numbers, vehicle miles, track miles, and the passenger fleet, the streetcars, the number of buses, the number of interurban cars. So they had three distinct modes of transit in operation. The buses were still a pretty small part of BC Electric in 1942. When you look at the relative ridership and mileage and so forth. The next picture here, if we can switch the slides here to
Yeah, let
our
me do
next slide.
that. Oh, hang on here. There we go.
Okay, this just gives you some sense of the geography of the area, and I'm sure a lot of you have been to Vancouver at one point or another. But it's good to kind of look at the unique geography of Vancouver and how it helped to shape the transit system. The Strait of Georgia, which is the big wide waterway that separates the mainland from Vancouver Island, is over on the left. And Burrard Inlet, which is a saltwater fjord, flows inland for quite a ways there at the top. And then the Fraser River coming down from the mountains splits into two at New Westminster, with the north branch of the river defining the suburb of Richmond, the north branch being the northern boundary, the south branch of the Fraser being the southern boundary. So this map shows the BC Electric system as it existed in 1942. The hatched lines there are the longer distance interurban lines. The solid lines are the streetcar lines, and then the dashed lines are the bus lines. And you can see here that rail dominates the system. There's also a small, separate, and isolated streetcar system in North Vancouver that had three lines. That was mostly single track. I could probably do just a whole presentation on North Vancouver alone, because that was an interesting little system. In 1937, a new big bridge was built across the Fraser River at New Westminster. And in the process of building the approaches to that bridge, the streetcar lines were cut in two, and so BC Electric decided to convert the local system in New Westminster to bus at that time. So you see that those local lines there in New Westminster are all dash lines representing buses. So I wanted to show this to you in part here to explain how the interurban system worked. There were two depots, interurban depots in downtown Vancouver. One was at the eastern end of downtown on Hastings Street at Carroll, and the other one was at the south end of downtown near Richards and Davie. And so the eastern depot served the Burnaby Lake, Central Park, and Chilliwack lines, the really long distance interurban that went all the way to Chilliwack. Whereas the south downtown depot served the line to Marpole, where there was a junction, and one branch went along the north branch of the Fraser River to New Westminster, and the other branch went south to Steveston at the bottom of the map there. So I just wanted to give you some sense of the geography here that we're going to talk about a little bit as we get into the pictorial presentation. The other thing I want to really emphasize is that particularly during World War II, the transit system had a massive impact in everybody's daily lives in Vancouver. The greater Vancouver population of the city and its nearby suburbs was about 337,000 in 1942. And of that number, 263,000 rode on BC Electric every day. That's just an incredible market penetration, to say the least. Mind you, this was at a time when gasoline was rationed and the production of new cars had been halted. Obviously, incentives to kind of reduce your driving quite a bit. Just keep that in mind when you see this operation. It was a very, very busy system, both the interurbans and the local streetcars. So let's move on here to the next picture. So I'm starting the trip here at the Hastings and Carroll Depot in downtown Vancouver. This was the one on the east side of downtown. The depot served both as the passenger terminal for the interurbans, and also it was the main administrative office building for BC Electric. Now, keep in mind that BC Electric was a huge company that not only operated the transit system, but also provided electricity and gas utilities to the Vancouver area. It also provided those same services in BC's second city, the city of Victoria on Vancouver Island. So it was a major operation, to say the least here. I believe that the company headquarters stayed in this building until 1957, when the company built a new office building on Burrard Street, which is still the headquarters for BC Hydro, BC Electric's successor. So here we are. We're at the depot. It's the late 1940s, and we're about to start a trip on what was called the Central Park line that went diagonally between Vancouver and New Westminster. Next slide. So here we're looking west on Hastings Street from Main, and at the very far left side of the picture, you see a building that's taller than the other buildings near it. That was the depot and the BC Electric offices. So this train has just come out of the depot and is stopped at the intersection there of Hastings and Main, which was really, for a long time, this was the main part of downtown, the most active part of downtown. And the intersection here at Hastings and Main, if I recall correctly, and Angus, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was a full Grand Union at that location. And so right in back of the two-car interurban train, you can see a modern streamlined PCC car. Unfortunately, BC Electric only had 36 of these modern cars. And that was a pretty small part of a fleet that numbered over 300.
Mike, you are correct. It was a full Grand Union, the only one in the system. And the BC Hydro building some years ago was converted into condominium apartments.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
That'd be something I could say that I live in a former interurban depot. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. The one on Burrard Street, the one on Burrard Street is now.
Oh, the new one. The new
new-
one is now condos. Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh,
Oh,
wow.
okay. There we go.
All right. Next slide, please. Okay. This picture is taken just right outside the depot. You can kind of see the rear truck of the car is on a curve there. That's the track that leads out from the depot into the street. We're looking west on Hastings again. And this car is on the Burnaby Lake line, the lightest interurban line. Basically ran hourly service out of Vancouver, and usually just ran a single car. In contrast to the Central Park line, which was always at least 2 cars and sometimes more. This scene remains remarkably the same today. Most of the buildings are still there, including that nice terracotta building that's being renovated here in the background. Next slide. We're back at Hastings, Maine, but this time looking east, right from the corner. And this is the Grand Union here that Angus and I were just talking about. And that's a Central Park line train that's coming inbound, that's coming into the city, 2-car train with local streetcars in back of it here. And also you can see, we talked about this a little bit before, the Hotel Empress. This is not at all connected with the Empress Hotel in Victoria. This was kind of a flop house by comparison. But I think that building is still there. Okay, next slide.
Mike, could you explain to non-trolley people what a Grand Union is? Did you hear my question? Oh, guess not.
No, what was the question?
Just explain to people what a Grand Union is. Some people may not know.
Grand Union is where you have 2 tracks on each approach, one in each direction, and you can make any turn or go straight ahead in any direction. So say you're coming from the right here on Main Street, you can either go straight through, cross Hastings, and continue on the other side, or you can make a right, or you can make a left. And so all the movements are possible through this intersection. That's what a Grand Union is.
Thanks.
This is looking a little farther east on Hastings Street, and this shows a 4-car train on the Central Park line from New Westminster. That line just carried incredible loads during World War II and afterwards, actually. But it wasn't very common to see a train of this length. The cars were built by St. Louis Car, and most of them were constructed actually by BC Electric itself in their New Westminster shops. So you have kind of a mix of designs here, depending on who built the car and when it was constructed. But everything was equipped for multiple unit operations so that just one car and one operator could operate the entire train. Next slide. Here we're turning off onto Venables Street from Clark Drive. And this is an inbound train, so he's heading into the city, into downtown. And this was the more usual consist of just having a 2-car train on the Central Park line. But this track, together with that Hastings Street track downtown, was used also by local streetcars So one of the problems, of course, here was that all this in-city street running slowed down the schedules. Something they never really did correct. The SkyTrain today takes a more direct route, and of course that's completely independent of any street traffic. Next slide. Here we're at the corner of Commercial and Broadway, and this is an outbound car headed to Central Park and New Westminster. This is a busy little business district today. Just in back of the car, about a block or so in back of it, is a bridge that crosses over the Great Northern Cut. So the Great Northern trains that came into to Vancouver passed underneath the street at that point. And then farther up the street here is part of Commercial Drive that is Vancouver's Italian neighborhood. So lots of good Italian restaurants and shops up there in that part of Vancouver. Commercial and Broadway was the end of the line for a couple of local streetcar lines. And so again, the track was shared here with the Grandview streetcar line, among others, that pretty much paralleled where the interurban ran until it got to the point where the private right-of-way begins. And I'll show you that here in the next slide. Next.
Yeah, I'm working on it. We're buffering a little bit.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, here Central Park train has turned off the street and is now on the private right-of-way that operates most of the way for the rest of the trip to New Westminster. The Grandview streetcar ended in a Y here. I think you can just kind of barely see the track turnout in back of this interurban that shows the Y that the streetcars use. So that's as far as they went, where they were basically mixing with local streetcars on the Central Park line. And the private right-of-way and the service there really helped to build ridership in this part of Vancouver and in central Burnaby. And to this day, you'll note that there's parts of Burnaby that look much older than other parts because the area was served by the interurban. Made a huge difference in accessibility. Next slide. Okay, this is again on the Central Park line, and we're about halfway between Vancouver and New Westminster here at this point. And I'm seeing some messages come in here. And Angus, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that this is the Joyce Road overpass.
Yeah, I think you're correct. There was an overpass at Boundary Road and at Joyce or Rupert. I can't remember which.
Yes,
I
I certainly remember. Yeah,
Bob Webster might know.
I certainly remember this when it looked like this nice arch bridge here, and so it lasted well after the interurban era ended, and this became just freight only track here. Next slide.
Yeah, it should have advanced, Mike.
Oops. Oh, that's funny. There we go. There we go. Okay.
We just got a little bit of buffering today, folks. Sorry.
Here we are coming into New Westminster. And New Westminster's downtown is basically built on a steep hill with Columbia Street, the main downtown street, at the base of the hill. So here we have a Central Park train that's coming into New West. And this was actually a change in the original interurban line. The Central Park line was one of the very earliest interurbans, opening in the early 1890s. And when it first came into New Westminster, it actually ran into downtown over a very steep hill to the right. And this bypass, which had a much, much reduced grade, was built about 10 years later, about 1901 or thereabouts. And that really allowed it to be used realistically as a freight line, as well as a passenger line. So here we have a two-car train. It's approaching downtown, and this is still a double-track line. In New Westminster, the BC Electric interchanged with both the Great Northern and with the Canadian Pacific. And the tracks were very, very close together. There were a lot of opportunities here for interchange. Next slide. On the way into downtown New West, we passed by the New Westminster car barn and shops. You'll notice a steeple cab electric locomotive over on the left. This building lasted a very long time, and part of it was used here to construct some of the interurbans that were in the BC Electric fleet. So it had a very long and storied history. The tracks nearest the camera at the bottom here are the mainline tracks, and you can see all the spurs that lead into the depot there. Next slide.
Just getting a little bit of buffering, so. Yeah, just bear with me for a second. Don't want to have to stop it. Just give me a second. There we go. Oops. Hang on here. Sorry. Then it jumps way ahead. So let me back up.
There we go.
There we go. There's the next slide, folks. Sorry.
All right. This was the final curve for getting into downtown New Westminster. The Fraser River is on the left. Those trees are over, I believe, on Anasis Island in the middle of the river. And then you can see there's a lot of industry in this part of New Westminster. Not as much as there was back in the 1940s and 50s, but that provided a lot of freight business for the railway. Next slide. There we go. So here we are, just almost at the BC Electric Depot in New Westminster. That's the building that's on the left. The building on the right is the Canadian Pacific Depot with the CP tracks behind it. The New Westminster Depot, like the one on Hastings Street in Vancouver, was a drive-through depot. You came in one side of the building and left on the other side. So the trains that continued beyond New West to go all the way to Chilliwack, then just continued through the other side of the building, crossed the Fraser River, headed into Surrey and beyond. Both of these buildings are still there in New Westminster. I'm sure that the CP depot is on the equivalent of the Canadian Historic Register, but it's a beautiful and very distinctive little depot there. You can see the BC Electric sign there on the corner of the depot. This is Columbia Street, the main downtown street in New Westminster. Next slide. Now we're going to take a quick look at the Steveston line. So this started from the BC Electric Depot on the south side of downtown. And I believe this is at Davy and Seymour. Have I got that right, Angus?
Yeah, that is on Davy Street, pointing eastbound between Seymour and Richards. And at the very next corner, it will make a right turn to go south
Okay.
on Richards.
So the loop was via Granville, Davy, Seymour, and Pacific, right? Was it Pacific?
Yeah, it then turned
Oh.
on Pacific and it went over the Granville Street Bridge rather than the Kitsilano Trestle.
Well, I just love this picture of the depot, this frame building with the electric sign that's just made up of a bunch of light bulbs, and the timetable, the schedule that's posted right next to the couple that are talking to each other there in the right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner of the picture. This could be a real busy place as the main downtown stopping point here. Unfortunately, this depot is long gone and replaced with another building here. So next slide. So the interurban train has made the loop now and has turned on to Granville Street and is about to cross the old Granville Bridge. The old bridge was a low-level bridge. It was a movable bridge for marine traffic, and it was torn down and replaced by the current high-level Granville Bridge in 1954. And that was the event that triggered the abandonment of the downtown to Marpole section of the interurban. So from that point on until 1958, when final abandonment occurred, this line only operated between Marpole and Steveston, and you had to take a trolley bus to get to the interurban at Marpole. And more about that later. But this was an interesting spot. That old hotel there in the background with the ads on it. I believe that's still there. Am I correct about that, Angus?
No, actually, it's gone.
It's gone too, huh?
It's gone too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, a lot of things have changed since I lived in Vancouver. That's for sure. So next slide. Now, this is taken at the other end of the bridge, the south end of the Granville Bridge. Downtown is on the opposite end of the bridge here. And at this intersection, Granville and 4th Avenue, the interurban turned off the straight ahead track and went on to 4th Avenue for a few blocks before it entered the private right-of-way. And so this was, of course, another section of track that was used extensively both by the interurbans and by the streetcars. There was an alternate way to get across Falls Creek that was used by one streetcar line, the Kitsilano line, and that was a low-level bridge swing span called the Kitsilano Trestle, and that was just to the left of this bridge, kind of in between the Granville Bridge and the Burrard Bridge. And the Kitsilano streetcar ran across that bridge and then continued out on a piece of single track to the end of the line at Kitsilano Park. The interurbans, for whatever reason I could never quite understand, the interurbans used the Granville Bridge to cross Falls Creek rather than the railway-only bridge. And of course, in doing so, it mixed with traffic. I think one of the reasons why they set it up this way was because there was actually a station on the bridge at one time. So again, this is looking north. The car is turning from the Granville Bridge onto 4th Avenue. Can we get the next photo here? Now, these are not interurbans. These are local streetcars, but the line that served Granville Street used some of the newer streetcars built, I believe, in 1929 by Canadian Car. And these cars were set up for multiple unit operation. So we have two cars running together. This was something that I believe was never done in Seattle and in most cities, but it was common in Toronto for many years. you get a little better view of the Granville Bridge in this picture. That's the Hotel Vancouver on the left, which really kind of dominated the skyline when it was built. That hotel had an interesting history in that it began construction in 1929, and then when the Depression hit full force in 1931, they halted construction, and it sat there empty, unfinished, until 1939, when there was a hurry-up project to finish it for the royal visit of the King and Queen in 1939. Really an interesting building with a fascinating history. So again, here, this two-car train, instead of turning left here like the interurban in the earlier pictures, going straight ahead and heading up Granville Street. The sign Prior Street refers, I think, to the car barn on Prior Street. Is that correct, Angus?
Yeah, so this car would have gone up to Broadway, turned east on Broadway, north on Main Street, and pulled into the car barn.
Yeah.
And finished it. So it may have been a tripper. We had a question of somebody asked if there are manually thrown switches and so on. This is a good picture to show the operation of electric switches. So the car, as it came off the Granville Bridge, this two-car train, when it came off the bridge, up on the overhead, there's a contactor, and running off to the left side, there's actually a wire on the span wire, and that goes underground to the electric switch. So, and typically, if the car would make a right turn off the main, it would power and it would throw the switch, which would then reset when the next car came and coasted. So there were places where they switched manually, particularly because these cars had conductors as well. And other places where they had electric switches. Hastings and Maine definitely had an electric switch there.
Well, that's really handy that in this particular photo, that funny little wire that's running on the left side of the photo is actually the circuit that controls the track switch. That's
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Okay.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, we were wondering about that this morning, is how did they control these? And so that's a really great explanation, Angus. Thank you. Mike, you ready for the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
and you actually see there's a little sign right beside the contactor that will say power with an arrow to the direction of the power.
Yeah. That's how the motorman knew how to activate the switch. Okay, go ahead. Next slide here.
Buffering.
It just takes a second because of the buffering. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do.
So remember the photo we showed just before the last one that showed the interurban turning right off of the Granville Bridge. We went one too far here. Here we go. There we go.
Right.
So here's a Steveston interurban on 4th Avenue. So he's come off the bridge. He's ran along 4th Avenue for a short distance. And here's where he starts to join the private right-of-way that eventually will parallel Arbutus Street through the west side of Vancouver and down to Marpole. Now the track that's leading off to the north on the left side of the photo here was the track that connected to the Kitsilano car barn, which was located near the underside of the Burrard Bridge. So this is where you got off the street and started to run on some exclusive right-of-way. Next slide.
Okay. Hey, just a quick note. I see a lot of action going on in the chat today, and I'm focused on trying to get this presentation through without buffering. So it's okay if you want to unmute and ask a question of Mike as we're going through this.
Sure. Okay. I threw this in as an example of how well maintained these streetcars were, and this is a post-war photo. This was like 1947 or so, and it shows the Kerrisdale car, which crossed the Granville Bridge and then went west on 41st through the Kerrisdale neighborhood. But look at what good condition this car is in. I mean, it's just spotless. And this is a car that was built around 1907, 1908, number 72. I mean, it was already like over 40 years old when this picture was taken. And what struck me here in going through all these BC Electric photos was how well maintained the equipment was compared with Seattle, the Seattle Municipal Railway, where they just had lots of deferred maintenance and the cars looked dumpy and unpainted and you know, minor nicks and scratches and bumps were never repaired. And you know, BC Electric just didn't put up with that stuff like that. They made sure that what was on the road reflected the company well. And so you really have to give them credit for that. This was on Granville Street, south of Broadway, up near the neighborhood down known as Shaughnessy Heights. Very nice neighborhood, beautiful old homes, and this was the kind of transit service they had. Next slide.
Just give me a second. So this is a refresher on the map, Mike.
Okay, there we go.
So we wanted to talk about where Marpole was and that junction.
Yes. So Marpole is, if you follow the interurban line that goes right through the O in Vancouver down to the Fraser River, at Marpole or just beyond Marpole was the junction where the two lines diverged, one going on the north bank of the Fraser River to New Westminster and the other heading south to Steveston. And believe me, Richmond was a very sparsely populated suburb at this point in time in the 1940s. It was still mostly agricultural. Very different kind of place today, that's for sure. Okay. This is the Marpole station. And if you look carefully on the left-hand side of the photo, you can see a Brill trolley bus. This is still a trolley bus terminal today, although I think the loop has been slightly relocated. During this particular time when the interurban was running, after 1954, the cars ran only from this point, Marpole, to Steveston. This was the last part of the interurban system to be operated. And that meant that you had to take a bus or trolley bus to get from Marpole to downtown Vancouver. This was a busy station because it not only served the passenger trains, but it was also the nerve center of a lot of the BC Electric freight business along the Fraser River. And the Fraser was
a locomotive back there.
Quite an extensive industrial area at that time. You see the Marpole Grain Company on the right-hand side there. Next slide. This is just a little bit east of the depot here, and we have a two-car train heading to Steveston on the right, and a steeple cab locomotive on the left. And if you look really carefully, you can see British Columbia Electric wooden box car just to the left of the locomotive.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. This picture was taken in the late 40s. Next slide, please.
Yeah, it's taken a minute for the images to pop up. I'm sorry, folks. This morning in rehearsal, everything was perfect.
Okay, so just beyond the Marpole station there was the junction. And if you turned right, you started to cross this trestle that went over the north bank, the north branch of the Fraser River. That is the Oak Street Bridge in the background, still there today, completed about 1950, 55, 56, thereabouts. And the interurban crossed the river here on a swing span bridge. That stayed in place for a number of years after the interurban ended for freight service, but it's gone now. But this is the way you crossed the river here to get into the suburb of Richmond. Now, this line, just as a little bit of background, this line had a really, really fascinating history because it was originally built by the Canadian Pacific as a steam railroad running between downtown, the False Creek yards, and Steveston, and basically developing and serving industries along the way. Within just a few years of its construction, the BC Electric leased the line. They did not buy it, they leased it for 99 years. And that long lease period was incentive enough for them to electrify the line and start interurban and electric freight operation on the line, which was called the CPR subsidiary was called the Vancouver and Lulu Island Railway.
Really?
And I believe it was only about 2002 or thereabouts when the ownership actually, after 99 years, reverted back to the Canadian Pacific, and the CPR continued to run it for a few more years before abandonment.
Mike, I might just mention that Steveston was a huge salmon canneries and fishing community, and that was another major feature for the ridership there.
Yes, oh, definitely. Yeah, canneries, a lot of fishing boats that were based there. There was at one time a car barge service that took railroad cars from there to Vancouver Island. So it was definitely a real busy place. Next slide. Now, I threw this slide in here because it's very clear and crisp, and it shows a afternoon rush hour scene on the Granville streetcar line. And again, this is taken right at the south end of the Granville Bridge, where the track peels off in one direction to go to 4th Avenue, and the straight ahead track continues on Granville. But you look at the people that are on board, all well dressed, definitely not a down and out population. And this was during 1944 when this picture was taken. That's a 1939 Plymouth in back of the streetcar. And it's just amazing how well maintained that this 1907 car is almost 40 years later, still in service.
I might mention at this point that when you see these cars without a cross or a bow tie on the front, these all had conductors, and they maintained conductor operation, many of them women who later became bus drivers, until 1952. So this car did definitely have a conductor boarding at the rear. So one-man cars you boarded at the front, and the two-man cars you boarded at the rear. Okay.
Yeah. So if you see a streetcar with an X painted very prominently in the front, the whole front of the car has this X on it. That's a one-man car that you board right in front, just like a bus. I think that all the PCC cars were one man, if I'm correct about that.
Yeah, that's correct. They were all one man, and some of the older cars as well.
Yeah. Okay. Next slide. So here we're back at the corner of Hastings and Main.
Carnegie Library.
Yes. Now the Carnegie Library is still there. The building next to it is the old Vancouver City Hall with the turrets, and that's gone. Unfortunately, really classy looking building. And this particular car, I mentioned here that this was a Grand Union. This is a car that's going straight across the intersection with Hastings from the north side of Hastings. The Davie line was throughout with the main, right? Is that correct? If I got that right there?
No, I think the Davie went through with Broadway because they both looped around the West End downtown. But
Broadway East. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
East.
You're
And
right.
this is heading towards Cordova Street.
Yes, so he's going north across the intersection here. Yeah. Well, the Carnegie Library is still there, and Angus, is it still being used as a library?
No, no, the new library opened in 1958 at Burrard and Rawson, and this was also the museum for many years until the new museum opened at Vanier.
Well,
Are you eating in
That's
your
right.
boat?
Yeah,
So
okay.
I think
well,
I'm
I
getting
don't
some.
worry. I mean, this
I
is
think
gonna be
Kenneth
done.
Borg is not muted. I'm just
Yes, I just
noticing.
took care of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Sorry.
so this area now is unfortunately a very rundown and problematic area in the city of Vancouver. So it doesn't look like this anymore.
Yeah, it was really the nerve center of downtown for a long time, with being close to City Hall and the interurban depot and lots of hotels and restaurants, theaters, and it's very different now. Yeah. Okay, next slide. So here, this car, the 215, is heading east on Hastings Street on the Grandview line. The Grandview line took the same route as the Central Park interurban, right up until Cedar Cottage, and again, no X in the front, which meant that this car had a conductor. We were looking at the ad that's on the front of this car, and I'm pretty sure that is a BC Electric ad for one of their new dams. 62,000 horsepower bridge at Bridge River. I think that sounds like a hydroelectric project that BC Electric had. In the far left there is the Marine Building, which was really Vancouver's first skyscraper. And then closer in, when you go into that taller building behind Dick's Menswear, that is the old originally Spencer's department store, if I remember. And then later on, Eaton's. And then finally, it became a Sears store. Have I got that sequence right there, Angus?
That's correct, and it's now Simon Fraser University downtown campus.
Okay, so that building has been through many reuses over the years. Yeah, and then also the other thing here is that the streetcar in the picture has just left a loading zone. Now you see the area where the traffic buttons are and the striped area. That's where the streetcar riders would wait for the car to come up, and obviously not a very well protected location there, but that was really typical of streetcar operations just about everywhere. Okay, next slide. Here we have one of the later Canadian streetcars pulling into the Stanley Park Loop. And Angus, I couldn't remember the name of the nice old apartment building in the background there.
That was the Stewart Building, which dated from about 1905, with the turret right at the corner of Georgia and Chilco, and it was demolished in 1984 under great protest. So,
oh, I'll bet, yeah, it was really a neat old building. Wow, overlooking the park. The amazing thing here is that this line ran down Georgia Street and made a left turn in front of all this oncoming traffic that came from the Lionsgate Bridge to come into Chilco Street and this loop here, this turnaround loop. The streetcars did that, the trolley buses did that afterwards, and it didn't really end until the trolley bus line was actually extended into the park, as opposed to ending right outside of it here at the loop. And remind me again when that happened there, Angus. That was in the early 90s?
yeah, somewhere in the early 90s. It was a 1 kilometer extension into the park, right in a much better location.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these were fairly modern cars. Now you notice that this does have the X in the front, so it is a one-man car.
Yeah, built in 1929. Peter Finch had just provided some information on that, with upholstered seats and very comfortable to ride.
Yeah. And this must be another car that's heading back to the barn because it says Prior Street on it. So after he does the loop here, he's gonna head to the car barn.
That's correct. The service was probably an overlay for a sunny weekend or something. So this would have been a shuttle service from downtown out to the Stanley Park Loop. And that's why it's now set for Prior Street. It's going to make a return trip to the car barn.
Okay. And even today, isn't it still the number 11 Stanley Park?
No, it's the 19 Stanley Park.
19. Okay, they changed the number. Oh well. Next slide.
So, Mike, can you explain the difference between the 11 on the top of the car and the 23 that's in the cab window?
Yes, the 11 is the actual route number that needs to be very prominent, since that's what most people use to navigate multiple lines coming on the same street. The 23 that is in the picture just right below the motorman is the run number. And so that would be, essentially this would be Route 11, run number 23.
Thanks.
Okay. Next slide there. This is on the 14 Dunbar route. You see the ad on the front of the streetcar at the Vogue is the new Hollywood movie with Rita Hayworth and Glenn Ford, Gilda. Now, one of the things that attracted me to that ad was that was just playing at Seattle Cinerama Theater just this last week, and as part of the Noir City Festival. So what comes around, comes around. And the Vogue Theater, is that still there, Angus? I thought it was the last time I was up there.
Yeah, the Vogue Theater is still very much around
On Granville Street, yeah.
On Granville Street, yeah.
But again, look at the wood slat siding on this car, and in what good condition this is in. It's just pretty remarkable. And I believe this is at the end of the line. And you can see both the motorman and the conductor on this two-man car here at the layover point.
It's actually a wying process at 41st and Dunbar.
Yes.
So these cars wide.
Do you know what direction this is looking here?
This is heading southbound, and it looks like the tracks are there for the Y, for
Yeah. Okay.
And it was single track for this position, then double track all the way north, all the way up to Broadway.
Right. Yeah. Okay, next slide. This was one of the 36 streamlined PCC cars. PCC stands for President's Conference Committee. So, those that aren't familiar with streetcar history, a number of streetcar companies got together in the early 1930s to develop a modern streetcar that could be standardized and thus reduce the cost of building and buying the car. And what came out of that process, the group that had been formed is called the President's Conference Committee, and that referred to the presidents of the streetcar companies. What came out of that process was really a wonderful car that rode well, that was durable, that was easy to maintain, and the passengers really loved them. They were in a number of U.S. and Canadian cities. Vancouver was one of the handful of cities in Canada that had PCC cars. Unfortunately, they only bought 36 of them in two orders, one in 1938, and I think the other order was from 1943. Those were cars that were diverted from a Toronto order. They were all one-man cars. And there are several cities in the United States that still operate these cars in regular service. San Francisco, Boston, Philadelphia, and Kenosha, Wisconsin, of all places. So in back, of course, is is an older standard car that's about to make the turn from Hastings onto Main Street. The number 14 Hastings was the last streetcar line to operate in Vancouver, and it ended service in 1955. Next slide. This is on the west side of Vancouver, the Point Grey neighborhood. In fact, the name of the route was West Point Grey, and I believe this is the end of the number 16 line, where it ran up 10th Avenue and then turned north to 4th Avenue, and ended there. Did I get that right?
Mike, it's heading northbound on Sassamat Street and about to turn west onto 4th Avenue to go west to Drummond Drive where it wide.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, 10th Avenue is behind you. So you're looking south, the car is heading north and about to make the left turn.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I remember now. It's completely different than the way the transit network looks there now. Very much different. And this line connected to a shuttle bus that took you to the University of BC. Next slide here. Okay. So this is at the corner of Broadway and Oak. The streetcar is on Oak Street, and it's the Oak Street line. But it looks like he's only going as far as 16th Avenue. So it looks like he's probably a pull-in that will turn east on 16th and head over to the Main Street car barn. One of the things that really attracted me to this picture was that when I lived in Vancouver, I was in an apartment building, the same building that Angus was in. There was a block to the left here on the left-hand side on Spruce Street. So a lot of the streets here in this part of Vancouver were named after trees: cypress, spruce, oak, and so forth. The Oak Street line was certainly one of the most interesting streetcar lines in Vancouver, and its outer end was pretty undeveloped for many years, and it used some of the oldest cars in the fleet. Angus, anything else you want to add there?
Notice that this particular car, as the ones on Oak Street, is double-ended, but they're one man. And he is going to go south on Oak from Broadway to 16th and then east to as you mentioned, to the car barn. But you'll notice he's crossed over. He's on the wrong side of the road. He's crossed over.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to, you can see the front trucks, the front wheels are already on the track that he's crossing over back to the right-hand side, the west side of the street to continue south. So he's changed ends at this location. He's come along, pulled the poles down at one end, put them up at the other, changed ends, and is now going to make the return trip back along 16th Avenue.
Wow. Yeah. Boy, what you could get away with when back in the days when there was so little traffic. Okay, next slide. This is a shot of the 16th Avenue shuttle. And so this had regular passenger service. It was mostly single track. And it basically connected the Main Street car barn to, went as far west as Granville Street, as I recall.
No, actually,
it went to Oak.
It went to Oak. And you only boarded from one side of the car, even though they were double-ended.
Yeah. So this was one of the few east-west streetcar lines in Vancouver, and it existed not just to meet that transportation need, but also as a shortcut for streetcars coming out of the Main Street barn to get to the rest of the system. Boy, the track looks a little marginal there in this picture, doesn't it? Okay, next slide. Now, Vancouver was one of a handful of cities that operated sightseeing streetcars, sometimes called operating or observation cars. And at this point here, the cars left from Robson and Granville, and then later on, towards the end, they left from Cambie and Hastings downtown. But imagine taking a tour of the city in one of these things, all open air. The conductor really played an important role as kind of the narrator of the sightseeing tour. Teddy Lyons was the one that was most famous for that. Many people remember him and talk about what an entertaining guy he was. I'm not sure if that's Teddy or not, because there was obviously more than one person that did this job. But these were really nice looking cars and heavy, cut down from a regular streetcar. And you're just all out in the open there, which must have been wonderful on a sunny day and terrible when it rained.
You get enough rain.
So 50 cents was pretty stiff a fare at this time in the late 1940s. But I mean, you did get a narrated 2-hour trip out of it, and it ran pretty much all through the day there like that.
I might just point out that later on it ran down Dunbar to 41st Avenue, and the children along the way would do a song and dance, and one lady would play an accordion. And so the people would throw nickels and dimes to the kids, and they'd go out to have an ice cream. In my neighborhood here, I interviewed people years ago that were doing a history of the neighborhood who actually did this as kids, and they learned eventually that a lot of the visitors that were riding on it were American. And so they learned to sing the American national anthem, and then the people on the car would throw even more money at them. So these cars were purpose built a long time ago. They were new at that time. There was one car that was converted from a conventional car to an observation car, and then converted back to a conventional streetcar during the Second World War. So there were only the two that ran until the end, which was September 16th, 1950 was the last trip.
Wow. Well, thanks for filling that in there, Angus. That's really interesting. One thing I wanted to point out is Montreal had sightseeing cars similar to this, and one of them survives in operating condition at the Trolley Museum in Connecticut. The name of which escapes me right here at the moment, but you can still ride on that car at the Trolley Museum. Okay, next slide.
It should be popping up. It's popped up on my end, so
there we go. Okay, here's the only color picture I have here in this presentation. So this is looking north on Dunbar Street from 41st Avenue. You can see the North Shore Mountains in the background. It's probably during the summer, lack of snow on the mountains and things. And the car is about to, he's going outbound by the position of the trolley pole there, and he's about to enter the turnaround Y at 41st and Dunbar. But this was the basic livery that BC Electric had for a number of years, is red and cream. After the war, they developed kind of an all-over cream livery with red lettering, kind of the opposite here of this. But this is, I think, what most people remember the streetcar fleet as looking like.
I just happened to live a couple of kilometers north of this location at 22nd and Dunbar. And this morning I was shopping at the Save on Food supermarket, one block to the right of where we're standing. So this car is about to enter the Y, and the car in the distance is heading north, having completed the Y-ing operation. And the observation car did the same thing at this location, which is one reason why they were two-man cars, is that for the wine operation.
Oh.
And so the last Dunbar streetcar ran in April of 1951, and the trolleybuses that took over are running to this day. So that's a little bit of information there.
Angus, Jonathan asked what margine is in that ad that's on the front of the car.
That was a margarine where you had to add some yellow coloring and mix it in because they couldn't sell it to look like butter. And so that margarine was a type of margarine.
Okay, okay. Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Okay, I think we just have one more photo here. We can move to that. Here we go. There we go. Now, I was really fascinated with this photo when I discovered it. Everyone but the crew in this picture is from Seattle. And this picture was taken in 1957, just months before the end of the interurban. The man over on the right, the far right, is Harold Hill, who was a prolific railroad photographer, took many, many steam, diesel, and electric pictures. And he also took a lot of pictures of the municipal railway in Seattle and, bought collections of Seattle streetcars as well. Now, this is the Northwest Rail Fan Group, which for many years met monthly in Seattle at North Seattle Community College. I know I remember going to their meetings. Harold has his two sons here in the picture. One of them is standing next to him there, and then the other is standing in the doorway of the interurban car. And you can see they're twins. Just a fascinating little picture of what that charter must have been like. The other interesting thing here is that this is on a piece of track that normally was freight only. This was on the south shore of Falls Creek, and the city shops there. You can see the sign up above. This was almost wholly an industrial area at the time, and never really had any regular passenger service. But they took the interurban down here just for them. Anyway, that's about it. I hope to pull together a BC Electric presentation in the future that focuses in on the freight service. We've seen the passenger service, the interurbans, and the city streetcars today, but I'm hoping to have a presentation in the future just on BC Electric freight.
Well, we would like that, Mike. I mean, I know our audience today is thinking this is pretty cool. And Angus, having you along for the ride, sir, just having that color commentary was so very helpful, so enjoyable.
Well, thank
Yes.
you. The presentation, for me, I drove trolley buses for 41 years and
didn't
saw
know
all
that.
the different generations of the equipment. And I retired almost 16 years ago, and I still get behind the wheel with our vintage buses for the Transit Museum Society. So, and I have had occasion to operate streetcars officially or unofficially in other places and museums or cities. So, for me to see these photos, we didn't move here till 1965, so I never did get to see any of the operation. But the photographs and Mike's commentary really helped fill in the details, and so I was thrilled to be able to help, and other people as well. We've got several people here who are providing more detailed information than I could.
Yeah, and that was very helpful, and we appreciate that very much. Do we have, besides Angus, anybody else that's got any questions or commentary for our special guest star, Mike Bergman, today?
I have sent some slides to Alan Miller to send on to Mike Bergman because I don't have his email address.
Well, Alan's here, so we can address that. People asked me a question about, I got here late and I'd like to be able to see the entire program. And the answer to that is if we look at our chat for today, the very first message in today's chat was a link to our program from 2 weeks ago, which was on the Duluth, South Shore, and Atlantic. And if you go to that link, that will take you to my channel where Mike's program will be. It's about 2:15 West Coast time right now. I'd say by about 3:30 or 4 o'clock this afternoon, if I've gotten the recording right, this will be going online. And you'll be able to watch it there along with all the other programming that we've created over the last 7 years. So anyway, that's the answer to that. Long answer to a short question. I will post the link again, so just bear with me while I do that. And I'll come back to the chat. And there is the link to our previous program. I've just entered that into the chat. And like I say, this program will be the next door neighbor of that program later this afternoon if I've done everything like I think I'm supposed to have done it, which I hope I have. So great program, Mike. You're always a great guest. You're super popular, and I think it's been very enjoyable. If you're interested in attending future programs like this, you can put your information into the chat.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Fisher from the Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive and Cascade Rail Foundation. And this is our bi-weekly Zoom.
So anyway, that is the start of the recording. So I guess that means that it does work. We're about 2:15 right now. So Mike's been very patient and guest all day. I'm going to see if there's any more questions, and then I'm going to start moving the program towards an adjournment. George, you got anything? George doesn't have anything. Okay. Anybody else got anything more? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to thank Mike again, Mike Bergman, our special guest. And in 2 weeks from today, 1 p.m. Pacific time, we will have, who are we going to have again, George?
Let me look. Make sure I got it. Gonna have Rick Panisi.
Rick Panisi, former Erie Lackawanna dispatcher. And many of us, Mike and I talked about it this morning. There's that famous picture in Trains magazine of the two Erie Lackawanna bicentennial locomotives on Sturruca Viaduct with the D&H bicentennial locomotive below it. Rick didn't actually take that picture, but he was standing there and took one of his own. So we'll be seeing some pretty interesting stuff from a part of the country that we don't look at all that often. So
I was going to add something about our audience.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
According to the participants number down below in the bar there, we had a maximum of 31 people participating. I assume that includes our host or our presenter, but our guest. But that's pretty high. That's a good amount of people looking at this program. So
yeah, this was a good attendance today. Yeah. So, Mike, congratulations to you because I see some of your friends here, and we all really enjoyed this program. So,
I would just like to add that this wouldn't have been possible without the Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive collection. That it's just such a wonderful resource, and it's a place here where all this kind of material can be seen by others and enjoyed by others. People can appreciate the history so much more by having this resource available.
Well, and you're a dutiful volunteer. You're there just about every Tuesday working on cataloging stuff and, bringing this stuff to life, because if it just sits in a box, how much fun is it?
Well, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So we appreciate you and look forward to having you back in a future program. So with that in mind, I am going to move us towards an adjournment. And as your host and moderator, Jonathan Fisher, Cascade Rail Foundation and the Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive, I want to thank everybody for being here today. And I hope to see you again on a future program. And I am hopefully going to stop the recording.